How is everybody?
Very great.
Good. Bien, merci.
What's the tip for to speed up corrections? Do you know? No tip?
Speed grader.
You could have a code and you give the list of your codes. So you have those annotations that have a special meaning.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's one tip. Another
Yeah.
What's the speediest way to use technologies and give feedback in a way that saves you, say, a good 80% of the time? The business school for languages is using Google Glass. They can video the texts while they're speaking and giving feedback. And without video, you could do it audio. Personally, I use often audio. Then you write, you express your remarks for each page. They know each page. They can check the page. And then you don't have to write for hours. It's just you record your comments. Obviously, you have a slick website. Pressbook is wonderful. The tendency is to be so structured often in online courses that we emphasize what's easy to access. I'll come back to it. Would I be less effective or more effective if I were just face-to-face? And of course, face-to-face, you can show the video. So face-to-face can be blended. You know, blended means you use both the face-to-face and the technology. Hybrid means you alternate. So this is really a question I have. I think at some point the students love being at home. Like now, you know, we're enjoying being at home while it's raining. Maybe in a minute there will be, I don't know, hail. And at that time, feeling home while we share things and we have a discussion, it's just wonderful. So students have this feeling also that sometimes it's a relief. Now the issue is whether if we do it only online, are we as effective? The human contact. You know, these are questions I ask myself too vis-a-vis my own courses. And there are various incentives. You have the text, you have the video, you have the readings, you have the sharing. In some courses with most people, I ask students to have at least a Skype with each other twice a week so that they can exchange. These are questions we have to keep in mind all the time. I wanted to show you briefly some of my reflections on the future, on elements that really would need to be improved in the future in terms of educational technologies. And those elements are mostly in terms of the role evaluation is a big problem, often not authentic, and there is an authentic learning zone that has to be represented in our courses. This is not easy. And seasoned language teachers are very effective in linking language learning to other disciplines, to the life of the student. So how do we integrate the life of the student in a class when it's online? The meaning-making process of experienced teachers is to link what they teach to society, to the world, to the life of the student, to Earth at large. So this connection is missing. You do it beautifully, Rebecca, with the topic and the life of the actors and the presentation on the video. But if we cannot succeed at creating online material that represent a genuine value building process, then it's a problem. And when it comes to school testing, when it comes to evaluation, because actually often we forget that evaluation is valuing. What we do not evaluate in schools may be the most important in life and in the life of the students. So that's the link to the self-project, the life project, the relation to our society, the world, our planet. So valuing is more important than evaluation. It's connected, it's deep. in a sense, what I see as a problem that we have to face for the world of tomorrow in terms of instructional design online will be how to integrate humaneness in our evaluative abilities, how to avoid this traditional assessment, which is standardized, normative, and use that actually as a norm, underlying some arguments that are economic. So educational testing is more and more instrumentalized through technologies. We integrate evaluation through technologies. The latest attempts are to integrate, the integrating into video games, the evaluation of competencies. But most often the tests use easy to program empty slot exercises, easy drills, because it's so much easier for the teacher. But do we really evaluate a deeper competency? How can we integrate more authentic material? These are reflections that are exactly at the opposite of the new public management that is imposed in schools and universities, which promotes standardized testing at the core of institutional accountability. Currently, I have to create standards adapted to a new university concept. I was joking with a colleague that our key standard is customization. The issue is customization is not normalizing. So what do we do? Because new public management was imposed by a school of economy, business and economy, mentioning that educational attainment is deemed measurable. It must be measured through scientifically valid instruments. Those standardized tests are correlated with student learning and then with the teacher, so-called effectiveness with the school effectiveness. No Child Left Behind led to close some schools that were ineffective, and now it's applied to schools of education, to teacher education, correlated with the success of the students in the classrooms, of the teachers that were trained in those schools. They may close the teacher education setting. That's just incredible. Standardized testing draws on a model of industrial engineering. There is a negative impact of standardization, and then also with minorities, and that relates to technologies. Each year we have about 60 applicants, and only 4 show up, and only 1 average will pass the test. 3 who don't pass, they're just abandoned in the middle of the test because they are persuaded they are not good at technology. So out of 60 people who are candidates to the school education who are from minorities. Why? Because they have a sense that they cannot pass standardized tests or tests on a computer, which means the computer, by the fact that it's a computer, is a discriminatory artifact. So in addition, tests are mechanisms which are used in subtle ways to manipulate social discourse, create de facto policies imposed by groups in power to affect priorities.
Before you move on to the next slide, this Shahami 2006, was that a study? Because I just Googled it and I see there's a book called Language Policy, Hidden Agendas and New Approaches.
That's the book. It's fantastic. It shows, for example, how tests are used to discriminate against minorities, and how tests are creating the norm, the language norm, and imposing it.
Okay.
So often technologies give the perception that they can improve learning because they propose clear-cut tests. Some people think they can replace teachers, and that's the mirage, the fantasy. However, technologies and control testing change the way we teach and learn. We learn and teach to test. I wanted just to emphasize this aspect. I have analyzed instructional designs used in high schools. I told you about it with the metaphor of the panopticon, omnipresent surveillance. Often the instructional design with its testing dimension is something that is highly depressing for the students, because it's easy to program, it's easy to design a multiple choice test. Often we don't realize that it's decontextualized. We have very little evidence which suggests that standardized assessment achieves its goals or offers useful guidelines for decision making. Nevertheless, we act as if tests were valid in the face of weak or limited evidence. And Baker was the president of the ERA. It has been noted in several states that standardized testing demotivates teachers and the perception of the profession itself becomes negative. Teaching in the profession of teaching, they engender hyper-consciousness, a form of accountabilism, a form of evaluative cannibalism. Technologies simplify the use of such standardized tests or standardized ways of approaching evaluation. And then we forget that what's the most important in proficiency? Is it what we test? And sometimes what we test it in a way that is decontextualized, controlled learning for controlled testing, and then it leads to generations of test sickness. The mechanization of assessment can lead to the loss of human values. Teachers, students exhibit numerous health problems linked to high stakes testing. Imagine you create your series, and I will end here, your series of lessons, and each time you are so happy with your measurement that you feel, okay, this is the way to go. But you may not realize that actually what you test is not really the best content you use, the in-depth understanding of video is not part of your testing, you know, and then it leads to shallow teaching. It may lead to shallow learning. And in a sense, it contributes to a certain form of coercion and social violence. There is a generalized mental suffering engendered by standardized testing. We don't realize that if we start doing fully online courses, it's okay when it's 1 or 2 courses. When all courses start to be like that, then there are issues. I've seen my own kid working at night to be able to cope with the number of contents on high school Spanish learning and math learning. Our technological society is, in a sense, dehumanizing. Are we becoming robots, cyborgs in a programmed society? As an evaluation that promotes uniformity, standardization may disguise values of passive obedience to the imposed format with a goal that every teacher, every student must submit to authority to conform to an imposed normative frame. How can we do what we do in a more humane way? More humane processes target more humane goals. So the quality of life, knowledge, wisdom are more important than totalitarian attempts to control every aspect of life, political, social, cultural, and economic. My reflection on the future here, authentic evaluation, yes. Now there are ways to use evaluation in a form that is not punishing. For example, favor individualization, encouragement, dialogue. Thank you for your participation. Bye-bye.
Bye.